everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today's task is because I've got a problem over analyzing everything. I wasn't really happy with the amount of spacing I had. You could see it was going to just drop down a little bit more from where I needed to sand it down to. And even though it was a little bit more, I decided to go ahead and glue on. So I didn't plank it, I just got it. Let me see if I can rotate this nicely. There we go. I just went ahead and got a piece of balsa wet and then put it around it and clamped it. Well, I didn't clamp it. I used some rubber bands. Just got some number 64 rubber bands that almost every person that flies RC planes has used these at least once in their life with a trainer. So I went ahead and then strapped those on, and then when it dried in that shape, I went ahead and glued it on. So what I'm going to do is, starting off today, get myself centered back here again, I'm going to go ahead and get that sanded down the way that I want to have it look. So, and that's why I left the motor in there, so that way I've got a way to put the spinner on, just to match everything up. So as soon as it's all done with the sanding, I'll bring you back in, because what we'll probably do is we'll probably mix up our first batch of nitrate dope and go ahead and get all the wood sealed on the plane. And I think that's yeah, I'll bring you back as soon as I get the nose done. I don't know how that's looking to you guys, but it's looking pretty decent to me. It's got a good flow. I can see the angle. I could put the cone on it. There's one little spot here where the wood was kind of broken up, and I put some filler in there, and it's going to need a little bit of a patch. and I just need to rework this transition down in here just a little teeny bit, and that might just be some lightweight filler, because once I get this doped, it'll make the wood stronger, because it binds the grain together, the wood. So let me see what I want to do with this one. I may just throw a quick little patch in here with some balsa and then sand it, and who knows, I may just throw a little patch right down in here in this little spot here with some thin balsa and do the same thing, just to fill that little area. So let me that's probably what I'll do. I'll get something glued in and I'll bring it right back. Alright, I got everything sanded down to where I think it needs to be set to. I mean, for me, by eyeball, it's looking pretty good. Those two little patches I put in, this little one right up here, it's kind of hard for you guys probably to see. And this one down at the bottom, you can see where that patch went in. Now, when this gets, because this is just the first sanding before I start using nitrate dope on it. I'm probably going to have at least 2 more sandings on it once I start putting the dope on. So what I'm doing on the first one is, like I said, I just want to saturate the wood with some nitrate dope, especially up here, because there's spots where there's going to have to be, sorry about this, more of the white filler going in around the front to sand it down to get it as smooth as I want to get it. So this is just, let's just kind of call this the rough sanding. I took care of that. I sanded the top up on the turtle deck and got that about 90% of where that needs to be. It might even actually be closer to almost 100% done. We'll find out. But now I need to strip it down. I need to take all the electronics out of it, take the pull wires out. I'll take the rudder and the horizontal the elevators off. I got to do the same thing to the wing. Get the ailerons off. I'm going to leave the electronics in it for now, you know, which is something I really don't want to do, but I think that's probably going to be the best bet. If I wanted to, I can pull it out, but I just think that I'll just leave the electronics in, because they're going to be in when I paint it anyway. So we'll just go ahead and I'll get all that ready to excuse me, I'll get that ready to start putting some dope on it, and then I'll bring you guys back when it's time to mix up a batch. Alright, with the plane being ready to begin the covering process, let me show you guys what we're using. We're going to use silk span, and silk span is kind of a, I kind of describe it as something, it almost feels like a dollar bill. It does have, whether it's got real silk in it, I'm not sure, but it is a cellulose based covering. So, and it's really kind of strange. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. We'll take a quick little look at it. Hopefully we can get close enough. This is kind of what it looks like. It's semi, you know, you can kind of almost see through it, what's in the background. But that's almost what it seems like, is like a really thin dollar bill. One of these days I'll figure out exactly, by looking it up, what it's made out of. But anyway, I've used this before in a couple projects, and the reason why I like using it on planes like this that we're putting together is it was kind of, the plane itself, I try to keep the coverings period specific. Because back in the day, that was one of the options you had on a 40 size plane. A lot of people did use silk span because, to me, it's easier to use than plastics, than Mylar, especially when it comes to corners and seams. Because you'll see on this one, as we progress through, especially on the wing tips, I'll show you how I cover those things, and when it's done and painted, you will not see the overlap seams. Stuff works really nicely. Now with the dope, we've got 2 options. We can go with butyrate dope, which I've got a club member, oh geez, probably 3 years ago, wasn't going to use it, and so he just decided to hand it out, and because he knows that this is what I enjoy doing, is building. He just gave me 2 quarts of it. Now this is a butyrate dope. So for thinning butyrate dope, It's kind of the same thing with nitrate, because I'm going to be using nitrate, but I'll get back to nitrate real quick. With butyrate dope, you got a couple options. You can either go with a lacquer thinner, which is what I would prefer. You can go with an acetone, and the reason why I don't really go with that is because lacquer thinner is cheaper and it's going to do just as good a job too. Plus, certain types of acetone, it's almost makes it too quick of a cure, so when you go ahead and you start mixing it in, people have said it almost turns to, it's almost like a gel. So I'd stay away from acetone. The other thing you can use is MEK, methyl ethyl ketone. It's a good thinner. I've used it before. I don't like using it for the one reason that even with a lacquer thinner, you should be wearing one of these things, but with methyl ethyl ketone, you better be wearing one of these things. Yeah, if the fumes overcome you, what'll probably kill you is when your head slams into the floor. So I pretty much stay away from methyl ethyl ketone. I've used it more for cleaning certain items, and then you got to make sure you've got the respirator on. So what we're going to be using, the old tried and true Randolph. It's a non-tautening nitrate dope. So even though they call it non-tautening, it will tighten up a little bit as it dries. It's not a large amount where you're going to be cracking the ball set and pulling, the fuselage together tightly. So what you'll do with this is this originally will be getting mixed 50-50 with some lacquer thinner, and that is what I'm going to be using to go ahead and prep the wood for covering. It's also what will be put on the top once this is attached. So once the silk span gets attached to the plane, this will be going through, thinned out. It'll be going in. Now what I will be using to attach the silk span is nitrate dope straight up, non-thinned. And you'll see how it's, because this stuff will go on wet. It'll get cut, it'll get sprayed down, and I'll have it set up so it's kind of hanging. I just normally just kind of let it stick itself with the water to the building surface, and just let it sit for probably about 4 or 5 minutes, just so that everything gets relaxed. And then you'll put a thin bead of thick. So say that I was going to do this part here, I would come in and underneath it I would put some thick on either side, and then I would try to cover over the top. I can either do it there or I can do it down here on the sides and fold it under. It really doesn't matter how it gets done, just as long as you have the thick down and it's wet and then it sticks through. You'll see how everything progresses when we start doing this, because it's I just find it very enjoyable, and it goes relatively quick too. So what we'll be doing is I'll be bringing out, I got to go see if I can find another little quart container. I had some brand new ones. If not, I'll have to find something else to mix up a small batch in. But what I'll do is we'll get this set up to start, let's call it wetting, just to start putting it on top of the wood so it soaks in. And like I said, it's going to be one coat, and it's going to be I'll probably do 2 coats, then come back and sand the fuzzies, because it'll raise the grain on the wood, and then go back, put another coat on, sand that down with some maybe 320 grit sandpaper, and see what that looks like. If it's still fuzzy where you still have some of the wood grain popping up, then we'll put another coat on it, and then we'll call that done. So let me see what I can dig up around the shop. I think I've got some unused tins here somewhere, and let's get some dope mixed. Alright, now it's time to mix. As you can see, there's no more plans on the bench because the building is done. It's the best part of the job is taking the plans off the workbench. Alright, I'm going to try to pour this as carefully as possible without spilling it. I want to go pretty close to halfway up on this, so let's get up to 400 mil, which is not quite, what are we looking at, 3, so 1.5. So let's go up to 1.5 fluid ounces. And you can see how thick it is right now. Alright, the dope has been poured. Now, I don't know how much I've got left of this old bottle of thinner, so it's a little can. Well, the best thing to do is start off slow. That way you're not overloading it. It's normally put in just enough to get it so you start thinning it out. And until this gets completely blended in. Once it gets blended in, you can see that you might be able to see the different layers in it. It's kind of, it's not really clear. It's kind of, it's got this weird little, you can see it's two types. So this is where we'll just speed up the video. Alright, now that it's all mixed up, that's probably about 5 minutes of stirring. That's why I didn't keep you along for that little ride. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to start. I'm just going to show you how you kind of get started with it, and then we'll call this end part 1 of the nitrate dope videos, because it's you know, I've got probably a day and a half of just working on this stuff, so it's just going to be the final prep. So let me show you how we get started, and then we'll see you guys next week. And by the way, this brush, I did watercolors. Yeah, I painted back when I was younger. This was one of the brushes from my watercolor class, and I love this thing. I've covered started back in 2006 when I built the big biplane. That's where this first started getting used for it. So it's treated me well over these years. So anyway, this is how we get started. And the first coat you put on is going to get sucked up real quick by the balsa. So I'll see you guys next week.